Hey there, Moss here again. Today I wanted to talk about how I created the 8K cam for the University of Florida football program. Disclaimer right now, it's not an actual 8K camera, it's just what a lot of NFL viewers would call it because it was so crystal clear and the depth of field was so shallow that it looked like an 8K image out of something like Madden. But in reality, it was 1080p footage out of a A7R4. That's right, A7R4. Not even anything that's, not even A7S3, an A7R4. That's a primarily photo camera. The main thing that blew people's minds was the low depth of field. And so when my boss came to me and asked me, how do we make this happen? I was like, okay, low depth of field, I got this. Preferably, I'd like to use an FX6, which is what we ended up using, and something with a really, really fast aperture, which we did end up using. There's something in sports that can be extremely difficult to manage is a very wide open or fast aperture with lots of moving objects, right? So if you're shooting someone who's running.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
And you're trying to focus on them with like a 1.4 or 1.2, it's not gonna hold focus. The plane of focus is so low that it's going to struggle to find it if you have autofocus, or if you're manually focused, you're probably gonna just straight out fail majority of the time, unless you're one of those big poppy G's up in the cinema world who all they do is pull focus every day, even though they probably hate that too when a DP comes to them and goes, hey, 1.4 today, and they're like, oh, yeah, that sucks. It does suck. So I had to figure out, how do I get this action in the end zone of a football field, right, on something that's lower than 1.8 aperture. So 1.4, 1.2, something like that, and have it be smooth. So basically I strapped together a lens, a camera, and a gimbal, something to hold the gimbal, because I would be operating this all day for hours at a time. So basically I got a Thanos arm to hold a gimbal, and I got the RS3 Pro, which is for the price, very good gimbal, but plenty of issues with that gimbal. I will rant about that another day. Not a perfect gimbal in any way, but when holding an FX6 with a smaller lens, it works perfectly fine, even though I do have issues from time to time, and I do balance it perfectly. I will say, absolutely perfectly. No, there's no issues with my balancing. I'm the best at balancing, guaranteed, every time. So you take that, you take the Thanos Pro arm, you take the RS3 Pro, you take your FX6, and then you grab a G Master 24mm 1.4, I believe. You strap that on there. And how do you catch focus? How do you catch focus on all these moving athletes once they score a touchdown? Because this is really what I was doing, is capturing the touchdown moments at the end of each drive that they score. So I would run out on the field, I'd run up to their face, and I'd try my best to manage the autofocus in a way that made it easy to focus on who I wanted to in the frame, which I actually figured out a decent way to do this, even though it's not particularly that easy and it's not perfect either. So what I ended up doing was going into the FX6's autofocus settings, and I put it to focus at a certain spot where I knew I wanted to put the athlete who had just scored, and it will only focus on whatever is in that spot. So right in the middle of the screen for me is where I wanted them, because it was going to be put up to the big screens or possibly broadcast, right? That shot is what I was envisioning, and I would put the focus spot right in the middle of the screen, right where I could see everything perfectly and where I could frame everything up. And it worked. It would focus. The Sony FX6 autofocus is very, very good. It's probably one of the best, if not the best, in its category of autofocus. And even at 1.4, if there was something in the general vicinity of that focus, it would focus on it, and it works. The depth of field is extremely low. Of course, you have to have yourself closer to the subject to drop the focus off, so there's a lot more fall off from the subject, so there's a much more, blurrier background, but the faster the aperture will appear when the subject is closer to the lens and the camera. I ended up doing that, worked very well, and that's kind of where I ended off on this camera. And I do have a lot of new iterations that I would really like to add on. Season's coming up, and I really want to talk about what I'm gonna do next. I will post about what I end up going with for this next season and if it works or not. So stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe button or maybe the bell. I don't even know what the bell does. It's pretty cool though. I heard it does good things. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Monkey.